All right, so good evening. It's 6:01 PM. It's December the 10th, Tuesday, and I'll call to order the special communications meeting for the Groton Board of Education. Um, And the first item on the agenda is report from the communication specialist.
Yeah, so
Turn that over to you, Rebecca.
I am going to, hi everyone, I'm going to share my screen. In a moment here. Huh. Presentation is not showing in my options. Give me a moment here. There it is. Clint, do you know how I make this bigger so it's like presentation?
Can you click slideshow at the top?
It's covered up by my.
Oh, you should be able to do view.
Got it. Got it. It was covered up. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for your
Looks good.
patience. Thanks. Okay, so I wanted to just highlight, communications is very much part of every single day, lots of projects, consistently just, getting pulled in on a day-to-day basis to things, in addition to just sort of the daily communications that we have going out as a school district. But wanted to highlight sort of some of the special projects and things that we've had going on since really the start of the school year. So obviously, lots of different back to school communications on all of our different channels, whether it's the website, Parent Square, and this is our second full year having the entire district on Parent Square. As part of that back to school communications, there's always a lot of annual forms, Chromebook forms, free and reduced lunch forms, and we're still very much in the midst of trying to get sort of our disengaged parents engaged in completing those things. And then, of course, we have Impact Aid, which has been going on since the very beginning of October, and that's a huge effort to capture those forms from our families as well. And we'll be winding that down over the next couple of weeks. We're always looking, again, with the new school year, but even throughout the school year, to always get our all of our parents engaged in their child's education, and particularly on our different platforms that we do have, whether that's Parent Square or Power School, which really are our two main platforms that we need them to adopt and sort of get involved in. Keeping in mind, however, that with Parent Square, even if a parent doesn't register their account or activate their account, they are receiving communications or push communications that we send out. Attendance campaign, we always start the year out by sharing our attendance and calendar magnets. This year, our slogan has been "School is better with you," which applies nicely to both our student population as well as our staff, and trying to make sure our staff are coming to work. So we've had that throughout some different things. We're going to be producing some nice postcards that teachers can send home to students with a little shout out, and trying to carry that messaging through. A big focus of our attendance campaign and discussions, especially with the attendance teams at all of the different schools this year, has really been on, really focused on the tone of our attendance communications and educating parents on sort of what some of the attendance standards are. And of course, really looking at those students who are at risk of being or already are chronically absent. We just last week pushed out a community survey around the strategic plan and seeking input on that. And I know Anne-Marie is going to comment on that.
Thanks, Rebecca. So yeah, we've had a great response so far. I think we sent it out. What day did we send it last week, Rebecca? Like maybe Thursday or Friday? Or
I
was
think
it
it was
even
Thursday. Yeah,
okay, Thursday or
Thursday, I
Friday of
believe.
last week? So just a couple of days ago, and we're close to 200 responses. Most of our responses are from our families. I think that's the largest percentage. Over 60% of the responses are from our families. We have another close to 40%, I think. No, maybe it's 20, almost 30% are from our staff. And I know that the union, I reached out to the co-presidents actually of the teachers union. They're going to do another push in the next couple of days, encouraging our teachers to respond to the survey. We want as many, of course, responses as possible so we can kind of capture that feedback. We do have some responses from the members of our community. I know that Superintendent Austin is going to reach out to a variety of different members of the community to solicit their input. And we have some limited responses from our board members. So just a friendly reminder to our board members that are on this call to take an opportunity to complete the survey. It does not take longer than, I would say, 2 minutes to complete it.
Yep. And it is completely anonymous. And we've made sure of that in all of the settings, and share that in the communications when we've pushed that out. I'm not sure if you have had an opportunity to see this. It just got delivered last week. It's the Earning Cost Meters program, his farm to school program. They had gotten a grant for a hydroponic farm shipping container. That got delivered I believe last Monday morning, just after Thanksgiving. It's set on the land behind central office. So that is something we were involved in as well in terms of creating sort of the design for the exterior of the shipping container that says "Welcome to our farm" and has some different graphics on it and some different elements on the back. They've never designed anything for a shipping container, so that was a new one for me. I think it came out pretty good. We always, that was a grant funded project for Ernie to get that shipping container farm. And so we always have to be cognizant of making sure, state logos are on it and the proper accreditation statements and things like that. We're always looking to showcase our students, our staff, our schools, our initiatives that are going on. There's so much going on across the district. And that's definitely an area that we're hoping to ramp up and be doing more with. We see that when we share those things on Facebook or Parent Square or wherever, that people get really excited about seeing those sorts of things, of course, celebrating our students and our schools and seeing students really engaged in what they're doing in the classrooms is always exciting and wonderful. And then, it also helps with staff recruitment and from an HR perspective to be able to see great things happening in our district and happy teachers, happy students, engaged in really exciting teaching and learning in the classroom. Website, I'm going to talk more about that, but that is just always very active area. As well as, I mentioned it's our second full year using Parent Square, but it's a very robust platform. So we're always looking to take advantage of the tools and resources available through that. We're doing a lot with groups, particularly, different extracurriculars and athletics, and hoping. Really, our goal is for that to be the core platform that parents are communicating with, their school, their teachers, their coaches. So groups is something that helps us do that, particularly with the extracurriculars. Underneath the umbrella of the website, when we have been creating the website, we actually have a companion piece to that. It's an app through Final Site, and we're getting ready to launch that. And not that we necessarily need another platform to direct parents to, but this is really going to be more of a container or a bucket that we can point parents to that shows them all the different resources that we have here in the district: Parent Square, Power School, the Google Classroom, all of those different things. So when we have new students and we're onboarding new folks, we can just really point them to this one centralized place where they can go and start, downloading everything that they need for the school district, and hopefully make that easier. We're never going to get away from needing maybe, a few different apps and different systems for things, but if we can help parents organize that and make that a little easier for them, that will be better. Clint, do you want to say anything else about that?
No, I think the real delivery, as you said, Rebecca, really is we're not trying to recreate the wheel and add more things for people to do. It's just another way to point people through the funnel and get them where we need them to be, which is why I'm excited about it.
Yeah. We're already talking about K registration for next school year, working on those forms, and going to be ramping up those website elements, looking to launch that right after the new year. And then shortly thereafter, probably the end of January, beginning of February, is the timeline we're looking at for our annual magnet lottery, which you'll be hearing more about. So showcasing all of those programs is always a huge spring focus. And then another exciting program that we just completed is sort of this Fitch High School branding campaign. They had 2 grants, one that Dan Couture was in charge of around sort of student life and athletics and extracurriculars. And then there was also one focused on career pathways and early college experiences and those academic pieces. So there were funds there that we used to create a lot of banners for departments, banners for the school, banners that highlighted their RISE slogan, banners and things that highlighted student life. I know we've talked about before that here in Southeastern Connecticut, we're in a super competitive school choice environment. So we have these other schools sometimes showcasing what they offer students, and they sometimes come into our schools, and we wanted to be able to have a really nice look and feel and presence and be showcasing and elevating how we showcase Fitch. So any questions as I go along about any of those areas that you want to ask? Next, I was going to dive into some metrics that I wanted to share with you on the website and Parent Square. How do we?
I didn't see how it came up, but I'll recognize Jen and then Adrian.
Thank you. Oops, am I still here or did I
Yeah.
lose you guys? Okay.
Nope, you're good.
So thank you. I had typed in a question while you were presenting and then I have a separate question. No. So, in regards to the container, when Ernie presented to us, was it like several months ago? I thought it was supposed to be at Fitch or GMS so that the kids could see the progress of, like growing the vegetables and stuff. So I was confused as to why it ended up in central office. So that's question number 1. And then question number 2, I believe I asked this before and the answer was yes for Parent Square, but can we tell if the lack of participation in Parent Square is in that high risk population, students, parents, because maybe they don't have unlimited network capability, or maybe they don't have a phone? Can we sort of tell? And also, is the platform available in, let's say, Spanish?
So I'll address your first question, and I don't know if anyone else on the call knows anything about this. I don't know anything about the location of the container. I don't have any knowledge about that overall program and the placement of the container. I think that's probably an Ernie or a Sam question.
Okay.
So, but I did help with the exterior design.
Okay, thank
but in
you.
terms of the placement, I can't speak to that.
Okay,
But I'll make a
that's
note
fine.
of it and mention to them that you were asking about that. In terms of Parent Square, I have some, for this presentation, I actually wanted to share some metrics. So I focused on the website and Parent Square, but the short answer is yes. Parent Square is very much our families that have designated that they are Spanish speaking receive everything in Spanish.
Okay,
And then I will be sharing some numbers, and we can absolutely see whose phone numbers potentially are a landline versus a text phone number. We can see if we have any families who we cannot communicate with. So we can see that we have actually the percentage is 99.6% of our families we are communicating with and engaged. There's 15 families right now that we are not communicating with, primarily because they have opted out. But I'll be sharing a little more about that.
And if I may, Rebecca, just to jump in, Jen, just to add a little more to that, anecdotally, typically what we see is parents almost universally have access to a phone. It's often they don't have access to a full computer, a laptop, a desktop, or something. So, sometimes when it's a large form, we try to always make them as best we can mobile friendly, because oftentimes that's the only communication device they have. So yeah, times have kind of changed. And I think the data that we've collected, at least over the past couple of years, has really kind of pointed in that trend. Again, that's anecdotal and from our conversations and so forth, but that seems to be the trend for those families on the lower socioeconomic status scale. They have a phone, they have some access to that, but they do not have full access to a computer, a laptop, what have you.
okay. No, that's fine. I just want to make sure, like, like if we're going mobile, that they don't have the tools, and you know, it's not really our responsibility for, buying them a phone or anything like that, but just making sure
Yep,
that
it's a fair
there is
question.
some way that we're communicating.
I
Sure.
think actually, if I may, I think going mobile actually increases our reach to what
Oh,
Clint
good.
shared, that most people do have a smartphone. And we learned that going back to further surveys. And I think when we last met, I be happy to look into some data on this, but I feel like having a smartphone crosses over socioeconomically more so, to Clint's point, than having a desktop or a computer or even an email address. And I think you'll see that in some of the data, particularly around texting, which we knew was a direction we needed to head into, a year or two ago. And we have made that pivot, which seems to be successful.
Oh, good. Yeah. No, I just want to make sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm all set if
Adrian.
Adrian wants to go.
All right, yeah, it sounds like one of my questions was going to be, do we know, do we have data on who frequently uses Parent Square, so are we going to get to that? Like
Yeah.
who's like basically fully interactive with it versus versus like myself for a long time. I would see a lot of emails, but I would never, and this is bad, I know, but a lot of them I never actually opened, or I didn't actually spend any time in it.
So I'm going to jump in, Adrian, because Rebecca's got all the data and so forth, but we can tell down to the user how many messages we've sent by type and so forth. It's the dashboard and the analytics in Parent Square are very elaborate, which is, and again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to steal your thunder, Rebecca. I'm
No, it's
excited
fine.
about it. It was one of the reasons we went here, is because we not only had issues of under communicating, but we also had issues of over communicating. And now, I'm not putting you on the spot, Adrian, but that may be part of why you don't open every email, is because there are times where I think we over communicate, or we don't teach people how to consolidate those tools into a daily something or other, if you will. So this tool gives us the data so that we can fine tune that up and down.
Well, I have noticed actually, it is much better this year. So I'm guessing that you've made changes, but
That's all, Rebecca.
early on last year, there
Okay.
was lots of communications on stuff that was unrelated and things like that. And that a lot of that, it has seemed to have disappeared.
Yeah. Last year was first full year. We did TRM the year before that, but yeah, Rebecca's been dialing this in, and she runs this show, and I feel the same way.
Oh, Clint, you muted. You muted, Clint.
Sorry, the signal to noise ratio is far better to where I'd like it as a parent than it has been in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always room for, but yeah, room for improvement there always. Always, I think data is a really important piece of the whole parent engagement and and I remember it's something this group talked about last time we chatted. And so that's why I chose to sort of focus on that for this presentation. If there aren't any more questions right now, I'll move
I was
on.
just going to ask a little bit more about the strategic plan. So obviously the survey went out, and I think we had been told about it as a board, but that there was, a group getting together. So what exactly are we doing there? Are we, developing a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, or what's going on with that?
I can speak a little bit about that. And certainly we can, depending upon, I'm not sure if this is the right venue, but if this is something that you want to present at a different, like a larger board meeting, but we have a strategic planning task force that is working to develop our next strategic plan. Most of our strategic plans, from what I understand, in the past have been like 5-year plans, and our target is to develop a 5-year plan moving forward. So it would be for 2025 to 2030, because by the time we finish and roll it out, it will be the spring of 2025. So it will launch for next fall, and then it would go through 2030, which is almost scary to say, but thinking ahead, that's kind of where we're looking, the direction that we're looking.
Is the board normally involved in that planning?
So yeah, we actually are going to be involving the board. This is just initial planning stages right now. We have as I said, we have a group that is that consists of teachers, non-certified staff. Who else is on it? Some administrators. And then what we've done so far, we've met one time, and we wanted them really to kind of just give us some, we did like an initial SWOT analysis. This is, Adrian, if you go back a couple of board notes ago, I wrote actually extensively about what we did during the first meeting, and kind of just talked a little bit about, that the work with that group, and then what our goals are going forward. But we had just one meeting so far, talked a little bit about the survey going out, and then how we're going to run focus groups moving forward. And each focus group will, like, there'll be, for example, a focus group with the board, so that we can get very specific feedback. We'll do focus groups with teachers at individual schools. We'll do focus group with students. And so there will be different kind of stakeholder groups that we meet with in smaller groups, so that we can have more personalized, I guess, communication with them about the types of things that they want to see in the strategic plan.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
All right, so back to you, Rebecca.
So I just wanted to highlight briefly, and I touched on some of this already, sort of our goals right now as we're looking at communications, trying to always, there's always room for improvement. Really focused on wanting to enhance and strengthen the parent experience across our communication platforms, make things easier for them to use, to understand, and to consume the information that we are sharing with them. I tend to think of our parents from the communications lens almost as like our customers. And you think about major brands and companies, they really focus now on that user experience, if you will. And so how they're understanding what we're sending them, how if we're sending them a form and we don't get good engagement, or we're asking them to go do something on the website and we don't get good engagement, we have to always be looking at things through the lens of how they are receiving it and understanding it. And the more we do that, the more we will get better at strengthening that engagement, because we can see where there's issues or where things are confusing or whatever. We want to increase our staff and our parent comfort level and knowledge with the platforms and their day-to-day usage of it. You know, if we're asking, if we're suggesting to staff, hey, you can use forms in Parent Square, you can do this in Parent Square, we want to make sure they're super comfortable with that. We want to, on the other end, make sure, again, to that user experience, that our parents understand how they fill out a form on the platform. Because the more we can streamline things for them and keep them in one space, again, we boost that engagement. Sort of that third point goes to that as well, leveraging the existing tools and resources, and especially as it relates to keeping our parents engaged in how their students are doing academically. We included in board notes last week that this Friday, elementary report cards come out. We looked back at the metrics the past couple of years on elementary report card views by parents in Power School. We don't give elementary parents a huge reason to be consistently going into Power School throughout the school year. And as you would expect, the views in that platform have been really, really low. Our teachers, our staff, are putting a lot of effort into creating these report cards and into putting comments and sharing insights about how students are doing. We want to make sure our parents are able to easily access these and view these. We don't want to revert back to necessarily needing to send paper home to do that. So we are, for the first time, going to be sending out the report cards via Parent Square via a tool called Secure Document Delivery. That's happening this Friday, and we're really excited to see if that's going to improve those numbers. And I'm very hopeful that it will, because of the ease of access that is going to provide. It's really just like a one-click access for the parents to see their students' report card. And then I mentioned earlier, continuing to support our district and school initiatives and showcasing all the great things happening with our staff and our schools and our students across the district. And that's an area we definitely want to keep improving on and ramping up. So now I'm going to jump into some of those website metrics, and then we'll get to Parent Square next, because I left that to the end because that parlays nicely into our next agenda item. Just in terms of the scope of our district website, it's huge. It's really the equivalent of 8 individual sites. We really have the district site, and then each of the schools are technically their own independent website. I mean, we access them within the same system and all of that, but they really do function as their own individual sites. The total volume of pages on the website is 1,628. So again, just understanding how huge our district site really is. And that has actually come down since the spring. It was at 2,200. So we have really been trying to streamline and consolidate. In terms of the number of resources on the site, we have 5,500. That's PDFs and images, files. That's not even links. That's just PDFs and files. So again, it's a huge number. And then posts, which are kind of like our little news briefs or little informational pieces on the website, news items. We have 293 of those, and we've published 8 posts in the last month. And that speaks to like news items about the district. So there's definitely room to increase that, because we know we have more than 8 exciting things that we could be sharing. So some of our website goals, again, we just want to enhance and improve the experience on the website. You know, the design and the refresh of the website is there, but it's already gotten a little muddy. We want to simplify those navigation menus. We want to create some consistency across the school sites. So if somebody's on Northeast Academy and clicking on About Us, the drop-down menus are the same as if they're on Charles Barnum or Groton Middle School and seeing. Now, of course, each school has its nuances and may have some different areas highlighted, but we want to create as much consistency as possible. We want to make sure that frequently visited areas of the website or really highly used areas are visible, that parents aren't digging for them, that they're finding them pretty easily, or anyone who's looking for information. Increasing the frequency of the content and photos. We have a wealth of photos in this district. And then accessibility, which speaks to the mobile responsiveness of our site, that it's translatable and that it's ADA compliant, which is really important. And when I talk about accessibility, you know, I mentioned those 5,500 files that are on our website. We really want to start to get away from all of those files and have just native web content. You know, when you think about how you go to websites, and when you go to websites, are you viewing the information on a web page, or are you clicking through to a lot of PDFs and Google Docs and things like that? The more that we keep people in a native web format, it's going to be translatable, it's going to scale to whatever device they're using, and it's going to make their experience better. And then, I'm sorry, just the last bullet here, it's hidden for me, is just ongoing support and training. You know, we have, I think, about 50 webmasters across the district in different departments and schools, but they are not actively using the website on a daily basis. And I don't think, quite frankly, a lot of them, even though we've done a lot of training, because it's not their primary role, they're not using it a lot, I don't feel like they feel super comfortable with it. So we can increase training, but also streamlining things and making things simpler will help.
If I may, too, just my 2 cents, it's great that we can make the site available for others to edit and have a process and approval process and so forth. Rebecca does shoulder a lot of that load. You know, this is an area we could do more PD in, but we have a long list of priorities for PD. So that is one of those that is on there that we struggle at times to get up there. But Rebecca does a great job in doing that. And again, a lot of the communication is flowing through Parent Square. So finding that mix of what we need to continually update on the website versus Parent Square, and then moving towards systems where it can be write once, publish everywhere, is really the longer term goal for all this.
Yeah. Well, just late yesterday, I essentially redesigned the food services webpage on the website. We had a situation where we were saying, you know, we have a new food services platform for parents to pay for their meals at the schools where parents do pay. We weren't seeing as many parents go to that website. We weren't seeing as many parents fill out the free and reduced lunch application. I went to that page and I, quite frankly, said, well, it's kind of obvious to me why our parents aren't doing these things, because it's not easily laid out for them in terms of what they need to do, or where they need to go, or what links they need to visit. So we're really like combing through the website and trying to work on chunks at a time and improve those pages. So diving into Parent Squares.
Sorry, Adrian, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, before we get too far from it, I'm to go back to the report cards thing.
Yeah.
It's obviously very troubling that parents weren't getting report cards if they were submitted electronically. I know this is a frustration of my wife, who's a first grade teacher, when they put paper ones in backpacks and they stay in the backpacks for weeks. You know, yeah. The younger kids teachers could see what's in the backpacks. But are we using other methods if we know a parent hasn't been opening a report card? Do we use other methods to get that information to them?
I don't know. Historically, the principals have had access and have been able to see in prior years which parents did or did not view report cards. I don't know if they then did send paper copies home. I do believe some did, but I can't speak to that with any specificity.
Rebecca, we actually talked to them about it at principals meeting, and they talked about making phone calls once they had some of the information about who was not accessing the report cards. And in some cases, even after they made the phone calls and reaching out through other methods, the caregivers were still not accessing, unfortunately, the report cards, because they thought it might be an access issue, or something related to, they weren't sure how to access them on Power School, whatever it was. But there's still a number of families where, for whatever reason, not still, you know, either logging into Power School. I think ultimately some did wind up sending the report card home, but as much as possible, I think they were trying to avoid, you know, this mass printing out of paper and sending that information home.
Yeah, in my own opinion, like that's obviously the report card. If a parent's going to get 3 or 4 pieces of information a year, that's the information that they really need to get in trying to get families involved in the first place. So, um, so yeah, I mean, if it has to go home like a permission slip and get signed or something, to me, I mean, I would let other people weigh in on this, but to me, that seems like, you know, I'm glad to hear that that you are trying to get everybody to, you know, to look at report cards, but that's something to continue, you know, working on until we have as close to 100% as we could get.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, what's one of the things that we talked about, as well as that, you know, once they, because I guess previously, and I'm sure this happened, I've seen this happen in a number of places, that the requirement is that parents would, I know, just like old school, I have old report cards back from the 1970s, not that early in the 70s, but, you know, early enough in the 70s and in the 80s, in which, you know, my parents had to sign my report card. And apparently that was part of the process here. But as much as they were doing that and sending the paper copies home well before Power School, the anecdotal information from our principals, and this is why I guess they started sending them electronically, or one of the reasons why, I can't say the lead reason, was that even when they were sending them home and asking for a signature, they were not being returned with a signature.
Yeah, I see that, but I also see that we have field trips when they have to have a signature, and I assume that
Sure.
all of the kids do that when it's a field trip. So
Yeah,
maybe there's other
totally
ways
agree.
on a piece of paper, but clearly we should use Parent Square, and if we can reach, you know, 80 or 90% or whatever the numbers are with Parent Square, but then if we have to print out paper for 10% of kids, that's an important piece of paper. So, but
Yeah,
thanks.
absolutely. And I think that this would be much more manageable. I can tell you in my previous district, we used secure delivery, and it was much more effective in making sure that the parents were accessing that report card.
Thank you.
All right, next I'm going to recognize Jen.
So thank you. I agree with Adrian that if they're only going to look at like a couple pieces of information regarding their child, like I said, we can't control how they raise their child. But if I I would like us, you know, like I know we're moving into this electronic world, and I would love to hear more about that secure printing or that secured method of delivery of email. But if we need to print it, we should print it because how many students do we have? And that's maybe the equivalent of maybe 10 reams of paper. Um, you know, less than. Um, so I don't know how much money we're saving by just like not printing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something we'll continue to be looking at and watching, because I fully agree that we need to make sure as much as possible that parents are seeing these. I know Anne-Marie mentioned they used this secure document delivery in her prior district. I actually had the opportunity to go to a Parent Square conference being held at Mohegan Sun for 2 days at the beginning of October, and connected with a colleague in my position in a school district outside of Rochester, very similar sized district, very similar socioeconomic demographics, and they'd been using the secure document delivery and very successfully. So I'm truly very hopeful that we're going to see a nice jump, but we will absolutely be looking at these metrics very shortly after the distribution on Friday and looking to see if we did see a jump, and if not, I think continuing this conversation.
Also, too, like maybe they're not looking at the report cards because maybe they're just looking, you know how like parents have the ability to see the grades, and maybe they're just looking at the grades and they could sort of tell like what, the student has without looking at the report card. That could
I
be
think
another reason too, right?
I think that perhaps is very applicable at the middle school and the high school level, because all of the grades are in Power School and you can segment it out by the different time periods of the year. But at the elementary school, that doesn't apply. They don't put grades in Power School at the elementary level. So the report cards really are the measure for the parents, and then the parent-teacher conferences to be seeing and engaging in how their students doing academically. So yeah, I
Okay.
think that's a valid point, that at the middle and high school level, a lot of parents who are engaged in their students' academic success may just be looking at that. I can admittedly speak for myself and say I did that for my own son, and I was very active looking at his Power School grades on a very regular basis. So the report card was just another reflection of that. But it is definitely more concerning at the elementary level, because if they're not seeing it on the report card, they're not seeing it elsewhere.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll be honest too. Like, I don't think I ever looked at the report card unless it was like at the end, because I was always in Power School and looking at it.
Right.
So it wasn't as critical. Like there was no surprise. But okay, so at the elementary school, um, if we're following and tagging and like all of these things still aren't working, maybe we as a group can think of a way, like an outreach type of thing to the parents or whatever it may be. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah.
So thank you.
So like I mentioned, I had the opportunity to go to this Parent Square conference, which was super, super exciting. Obviously did not stay the night. I'm a weekend son, just drove back and forth. Super informative. And again, as we go into this second full year as a district, trying to be using the platform better. So here's sort of our overall snapshot of Parent Square from our dashboard. I took this yesterday morning. We have 4,016 students. Now, granted, we are not communicating with all students via Parent Square. Only at the high school level do we have that ability. We have all of our staff and teachers in there, and we have just shy of 5,000 parents. Into Parent Square, we pull into the system the parents who are marked in Power School as either having custody or living with the child. What's nice about that is when you think about sometimes sending paper home, obviously we have a lot of students who have dual households. And so the nice thing about when we're sending things out via Parent Square is we're reaching, if they do have parents in multiple households, mom and dad, and maybe step parents, if those folks are flagged as living with the child, they're receiving that communication, which is nice, I think. And then we have some guests in the system, which is community members, and in some cases, Marine Science High School students who can play athletics for Fitch. So for the purposes of communications about some athletic things, if there's a team group that the coach is communicating with the players through a group in Parent Square, we do add them in manually. Everybody else syncs, the students, staff, teachers, and parents syncs from Power School, and that sync happens nightly. So I did mention earlier, we have 99.6 contactability with our students' parents at this point in time. It shows you that we have 15 right now who are not contactable, and we are reaching out, and we do this consistently. When we see or get flags for, the system provides us with contact verification reports, or parents can also say, I've changed my phone number, and they can submit a request for their phone number to be changed, and we can alter that. So we're always looking at this data because your communications is only as good as the contact information that you have. So we're always monitoring those things. Quite a few of these are parents who opted out of communications. They can't opt out of urgent alerts or notifications from the school, but they can opt out of just or some other general communications. Ideally, we'd like to see them opted into at least one mode of communication. So we do reach out to them to make sure that you know, they're aware that they've done that, and you know, can we get that resolved for them. In terms of our reach and deliverability, and this is what I was referring to with texting earlier, you can see in terms of our reach that text is the highest mode of communication that parents are really opting into. So for email, it shows that we have 85% of our parents with emails and 81% who have opted to receive emails. And we have 0% right now failing emails, which is very good. In terms of text, we have 99% of our parents who are indicating they have a phone and text. So to your question earlier, Jen, about, you know, the percentage of parents who have that, this speaks very strongly to, you know, 99% of them are saying they have a phone, and that is specifically a cell phone. The system does know that it is not a landline. It tells us who does have a landline. And 93% are opting in to receive the text. So that tells us that that truly is the preferred modality of communication. In terms of the app, we have 56% of our parents who have decided to download the app, and 2,500 who are receiving app notifications. Now they can have the app and be going in and checking it on their own accord and not getting notifications. But those are the ones who, you know, are getting those pings on your phone. So just a snapshot of interaction. A little more than half of our parents are actively interacting with us via Parent Square. This shows comments, appreciations, people who are using forms to RSVP or volunteer opportunities. This one is really strong, the direct messages. So this is the parents who are going in and messaging their child's teacher or an administrator or a coach or someone else through the system, and leveraging that feature to have some one-on-one communication with whoever is involved in their student's education. And we have forms and permissions. Groton Middle School used the forms piece for parent-teacher conference signups this fall. That went extremely well. We are not using payments at all in the system. And we have not really been doing any polls in the system. We have used forms. Last spring, we did use a Parent Square form for the intent to return form that schools send out every spring, asking if the student is going to be returning to the school for the following school year. So that's been very successful. We used forms for a transportation survey last year. The survey or the forms is not necessarily intended for surveys, so it's not as robust as like Google Forms is for surveying. So that's why we weren't able to use that for the strategic plan survey. Additionally, it would not have given us that and the ability to be anonymous. So we swayed away from it, but it's something that actually came up a lot at the conference. There was a tremendous amount of feedback from the conference participants to the team at Parent Square saying we'd really love for that form piece to be a lot more robust as a survey tool. Again, keeping the parents right in that single platform. And I know that's something that they are working on. So just this is what they add to the dashboard, but it says amazing, give yourself a pat on the back. Typically, there are 2 contacts per student. In our district, there is some variability. We do see plenty of students with only 1 contact. So 51% interaction truly does mean that we're very actively interacting with probably at least one parent for every student. So we're doing pretty well there for our 2nd year in, and we just continue to grow that. Like I did for the website, some goals. We want to continue to feature parent squared usage and help parents and staff feel comfortable with the platform, understand how to use it, doing staff and parent training. But we also want to be very cognizant of monitoring and streamlining the volume of communications we have going out. Because now we have a system where every staff member does have the ability, every teacher does have the ability. As we get into the metrics of this more, we are looking at, who's the parent who got the highest volume of communications from us as a district, and what did that look like, and are we overloading parents at all? We always want to walk that line of sharing information, being transparent, but also not overloading them with too much information. And because then they'll start to tune out. We certainly don't want them to do that. And then this is something that came up recently, is taking a look at our district policies on how we share community information and flyers and things from outside organizations. And I know that's highlighted on the next slide. And this was shared several weeks ago in board notes, because I know questions came up about this very recently. So all communications shared via Parent Square are created or curated by staff, either at the district level or the school level or the classroom teacher level. There is absolutely no advertising or third-party content that is inserted into Parent Square. It's not there. Anything that gets sent out was sent out by the district or the school or the teacher, and that decision was made by those parties. We do share content for outside organizations in our community, typically at the request of the organization and with approval from Superintendent Austin's office and working with Joyce Medling. There are 2 policies that we looked back on that are in place about this. I referenced them here, policy 1140 and policy 1325. In looking at those, they are very dated. They are very much focused on the dissemination of paper flyers in backpacks to students, which we simply really don't do anymore. Although there is a time and place that we might want to be revisiting that for certain things, as we discussed for report cards, or that actually came up last week in a conversation with Fitch around course selections and programs of studies, that there still is a time and a place where we might want to be sending some flyers home and hope they make it from the backpack to the parent. But we do need to, I think, be reviewing these policies and updating them to reflect the shift to digital platforms and how we're approaching that. And it was suggested that perhaps that was something for this group to maybe take a look at and bring to policy, or maybe it needs to go to policy first. I'm not sure about that, but that was something that came up.
All right, I'm going to recognize Jen and then Adrian.
I think it was a sidebar conversation that some of the board members were having, that in regards to the advertisements or the additional information that's not district related that's coming out through Parent Square, that maybe we need to bring it up to policy that it should be like 501c, because and it shouldn't be at the discretion of named individuals like in the superintendent's office, because let's just say they're always saying yes to the soccer club, but never to the lacrosse club. And we don't know why, you know what I mean? So I think if we are going to do this, there needs to be like maybe guidelines set up, like, hey, it needs to fill like 4 of these or 5 of these items. And if it's yes, then it moves forward. But definitely, there needs to be something in place rather than just a judgment call. My opinion only. So, and thank you.
We can refer that to policy. And a parent did email the board about why some of these flyer type communications were coming out and wanted to know whether there was a rule for whether they were profit, nonprofit. So I think it definitely is something we should refer over to policy for another look.
Yeah, definitely.
Adrian?
Yeah, just on that same token, I mean, I'm looking at that policy 1140. It says student clubs, teams, or other formally recognized organizations, school-related organizations, town agencies, and philanthropic. I can't say that word. I'm sorry. Organizations. In my opinion, that would exclude like Groton Soccer Club or Groton Little League or Mystic Little League or any other team, because that's not specifically for students. So we may not even need a policy if I'm reading this the right way. I mean, obviously that's talking about posters, but I think we can probably agree that now it's just electronic communication. It's the same thing. So I don't, is there a regulation on this that we could read that the school has made rather than just somewhat be it a teacher or the superintendent's opinion on what they think is close enough to the district?
I have not seen any regulations. We'll make sure on that, but I had not seen any regulations linked to either of these policies.
I mean, I think policy has a lot going on, and if we just saw something from the administration that kind of detailed out, you know, how they have been and will be taking care of this a little bit, like being a little bit more clear on organizations, because maybe like a town organization, like a Groton Rec thing does seem like it's directly related, or a school sport, but maybe these private clubs, because they do cost money, even though they're probably for nonprofit. They're maybe not. So I'd like to hear what the administration's take on that is, and maybe the administration just has a regulation in place or a way of dealing with this already that the board is just okay with, and we don't have to throw this onto policy right away anyway. So thank you.
So just to note, policy 1325 does have regs. So I'm not going to read them out loud at this point, but it's definitely something we can take a look at.
All right.
All right. We can come back to this. Last slide. And I'll make sure this presentation is in the minutes for you as well. But just some upcoming projects. We like to do at least 2 sort of district newsletters a year. I anticipate one of those coming out prior to the winter break. We're going to be continuing to focus on the attendance communications. We've talked a lot about the report cards and the strategic plan survey. Going into, once we come back from winter break, we'll very much be working on highlighting, this really should say, academics, curriculum, career pathways, and programs of studies, and accessing and reviewing those materials and information better for our students and parents. We want to make sure that they're really considering all of their options, the courses, the programs of study that are available to them, particularly at the secondary level. I mentioned earlier, we'll be jumping into K registration, always trying to capture parents earlier on in the process for that, so that we can anticipate what our numbers are going to look like for next year. The spring magnet lottery, we've been talking a little bit about that, the timelines for that. And the magnet steering committee will be meeting in early January. And I anticipate our lottery this year will roll out at the beginning of February and run through the end of March. And then we obviously have the budget that will be getting into full swing, and or really already is. And you know, efforts around that, you know, making sure our community and our families know about coming out to the meetings and the things that happen around the budget, so that they can have input and engage in that process. So that's it for my initial number one on our agenda. I know we had number two on the agenda being the discussion regarding Parent Square, which I know we had a lot of discussion around that within this conversation. So I don't know if there's anything else we want to talk about under that realm, or going back to that previous slide about policies and regulations around Parent Square, or if we're ready to move on.
I just have one quick thing. Is it possible for the board to be included on Parent Square for the schools? I think the board is probably included with the high school right now, but all the other schools, I mean, obviously there's probably some board members that don't want to necessarily receive that volume of stuff. But can we have the option of that?
Yeah, we can absolutely look at what each of their settings are right now, and what you know, what potentially they each want to opt into or not, and help get that set up for everyone. So
all right, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Going to my earlier point about communication overload, I think something we're going to be starting to look at is the option to sort of opt in to more communications, or communications within certain umbrellas or groups. Certainly not whole school-wide things, but maybe when we talk about things like certain clubs or athletics, or you know, so I think it's always good to let our audiences, sort of to a certain degree, you know, select their notification preferences, select what they want to be hearing about. So again, they're not tuning out, and you know, getting the information that they want. So yeah, well, I'll take a look tomorrow at what how all the board members are in there, and share options so that everybody can have access to what they would like.
Great. That's all my questions on Parent Square. So I really appreciate this. It was very informative. And at 7 o'clock at night. So when you presumably worked all day. So I appreciate that.
I'm all set with Parent Square unless there's something that you wanted to share in addition to what you presented in the slide. But overall, I'm okay.
Great. All right. I'm going to stop the share of this. Like I said, you'll get a copy of this. And then, yes, that's it.
All right. And so I know in the board note last Friday, Susan shared some of the information about the activities that are going on in the various schools surrounding communication through the Title I grant. And I don't know if folks had a chance to review that and had any questions. I personally, you know, this may go into another meeting, you know, as we learn more about it, but just off the top, I don't know if anyone had anything that perhaps Anne Marie or Rebecca could answer. Or Rebecca or Anne Marie, did either of you have like an opening statement about
I think
the Title I communications?
No, I think Jay, what you were saying is something that I was going to lead with. I think the other thing that I was going to say is, knowing a little bit about Title One and having some experience with that. One of the things that I think is really important is the communication to families about some of the events that we have that are, what I used to refer to, or the research refers to as linked to learning. So I was very fortunate a number of years ago to write and receive a grant from the Harvard Foundation for Public Giving, in which East Hartford Public Schools received a grant for 8 years. Each year, that grant was between $800,000 and $900,000, close to $1 million. And as a part of that grant, they sent us to a conference that was led by Karen Mapp. Karen Mapp is right now the leader in family and community engagement in the country. She is a Harvard professor, and she is widely known as the expert in this area. She's written a number of books and articles, and she's developed something called the dual capacity framework. And her work is often quoted around Title I communication. Essentially, in leading this work, she advocates that districts, whenever you have a parent event, whether it be an open house, even something as simple as what CK had the other night, which was their PJs and cookies night, is that in some way there's some type of link to learning for those people that are in attendance. In that case, it doesn't, although it might not sound like it, sounds like it's a fun event for parents and students. There was a literacy component in which teachers were reading to children and their families, and that way they're modeling for parents in a non-threatening way, a way that does not send the message that, families, you're not doing a good enough job. But if you want to learn more about ways in which you can engage your children in reading strategies, here I'm going to model this for you. And we can engage your children in specific types of reading tasks by asking these types of questions. And that's the type of parent engagement or communication that you want to have when you have events, in the schools. I know last year when the schools were getting ready to implement the Wit and Wisdom Literacy Program after it had been selected. And of course, this predates my time in the district. But from what I've been told, a number of the schools, including, I spoke extensively with Jamie Giordano, that her school, for example, did a family night around the new literacy program so that families would be, well aware of what that program would be like. I know that several of our schools have math nights. I think Charles Barnum had one last year where they have STEM nights related to their themes. So this is the type of communication or family engagement that you want to have that's associated with Title I, at least the type that the Title I grant advocates. And I think that's all I'd like to say about it right now, unless anyone has any questions.
Adrian.
Yeah, well, I would probably like to do a deeper dive than we're going to have time for tonight on this specifically, because in reading it, I mean, it would almost be nice to have somebody from the school level to be able to explain what's happening, because the way I read it anyway, like parental involvement is extremely important at a young age, and it seems to taper off as kids get older and older. And maybe there's things that we can do to prevent as much of a taper off with parental involvement, but it's still the way it is. So understanding that, but I would like to see how things are actually happening at the school level. I mean, there's there's some regulations in there that in our policy 6172.4, where we have to invite all parents for a meeting to review the programs funded by like Title I. And does that happen, and how is it happening? I'm just going to skim through these questions just so you understand kind of where I would like to go. But I do think it's probably, assuming that you guys don't want to meet until 8 tonight, which is probably more than we typically do in these meetings. But we give the parents capabilities of commenting if they're not satisfied with the Title I programs, and how does that happen? How is it measured? How is it recorded? And what do we do with that? You know, do we have metrics to measure the parent interaction with this communication? And you know, and do we give them opportunities to have input on the Title I plan? So like those are the big takeaways from that, you know, from that Title I regulation. And obviously there's tons of communication that needs to happen school wide, but these are, I think, I mean, what is it? Roughly half of our students or so are Title I, are included in Title
I think there's a difference between being so you can have a certain population of students that are identified. I think what you're referring to is like maybe a free and reduced lunch identification, but they may not all be clustered in one school. So the identification, I can't recall off the top of my head which schools are identified as Title I. I believe it's the middle school, definitely CK. And I'm sure there are other schools, but off the top of my head, I can't remember which schools those are. I'm sure it's Mystic River and maybe Thames River as well, but don't quote me on that particular one. I'm still kind of learning the some of the demographics with some of the district schools.
All right, so some of those questions are something that I would like to go into, you know, at some point if we don't want to get into it right now.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we can definitely have at least one principal attend. In fact, Superintendent Austin has let me know that our principal Chris, I can't pronounce her last name yet, from CK is like an expert in Title I and Title I programming. And I'm sure that she'd be more than willing to come and present about how she has incorporated all of those things into the work that she does with her families.
Yeah, yeah, I'd be interested in that. Thank you.
So we'll capture your questions, Adrian, and also from Jen. And if you folks are up to it, we'll post a meeting in January. And again, on a night where we're not constrained by being right before a main meeting. So next, I will recognize Jen.
Oh, it's just really quick. The two schools is Charles Barnum and Northeast that are not, I believe, they don't receive like the free and reduced lunch.
And also,
And
I believe
then
the high school as well
oh yeah, I think they
does
get
not.
breakfast. Yeah, something like that. Okay. And the principal at is Daphne, I believe. So
Chris
that would be
Dauphiné. Yep.
great if we could invite her or any one of the principals over. But looking forward to what you're going to share regarding this from prior experiences and just additional things that maybe we can sort of think of as like if yeah, how like in the policy itself is like offering various times, locations, and everything like that. Maybe we as a district um, can just have like coffee sessions or whatever it may be and just like let's say it's the Branford Manor that's one segment of the population, right? Like I don't know if they have a community center within Branford Manor. Maybe we set up shop like one evening for like an hour and then parents can come in and meet with us. Like we need to start thinking out of the box of like them coming to us. And I don't even know if what I'm suggesting is feasible or possible, but just things like that. If we're not getting interaction or if we want to disseminate information, let's say with just Brentford Manor and they have a community center, we go there. We take the roadshow out. And like I said, I'm not as familiar as to what we can or can't do, but let's start thinking of other ways.
All right. Thank you. And Rebecca, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that we do have an excellent partnership that we've started establishing really the beginning of last year with Branford Manor. And they do have a community center there. And
Right.
we have been out there we've been out there quite a few times to be present at events that they're having and have a table set up and just be there present with the community members. We've had specific Groton Public Schools events where we've gone to the community center and been available, particularly around registration. And it was also this past summer, because of that partnership that we had established, a food service summer meals location. So yes, they do have a community center, and yes, we do go out there and we partner up with them.
That's great. Like, as a board member, I didn't realize that we did that. So those are some of the things that well, maybe I need to start getting and learning more about. So even if it is just Branford Manor, maybe we do the same, and maybe we do. The Navy Community Center that's right off on Route 12. Like, I don't know if we take advantage of anything there too. So let's start reaching out.
Yeah, I think we are. I know Superintendent Austin does some of the coffee chats, but you know, I'm sure there's always room for growth and improvement. So, Adrian, did you have something else?
Yeah, I was just going to add that Title I does include that we can kind of use some of that funds for out of the box communication, saying that we can actually provide transportation for parent. I mean, I may be getting this wrong, so somebody please correct me if I am, but I think we can pay for parent transportation if we feel like if that would improve communication with the families. We can you know, maybe pay for some communication or transportation to get them to the school, or maybe some other meeting. But I think it's vast in the ways that we can do it. It's just to find that we find effective ways of doing it. And then there's also there were some studies, in the Connecticut State Department of Ed website has some links to a pretty good study that had to do with the Pacific Islands, actually. But although it sounds far away, I did get some comments back from someone from the Department of Ed that it's still very relevant. But it talks about building a cultural bridge. There's building and understanding family and community engagement. There's all sorts of things. And Jen and Jay, I will send you a link to this, because the link on the website is actually, well, maybe it's fixed now, but I'll send everyone a link to that. Just, it's pretty interesting. So I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for everyone for taking the time tonight. This has been very informative. And I definitely think we should meet again in January while we're still, you know, deeply involved with this question. I know we're going to be doing a lot of budget meetings, but, you know, we really need to continue to do the other work of the district while we're doing that. So thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you to Clint. I believe he dropped off. Thank you, Anne Marie. I know you're traveling, and so we appreciate your zooming in to join us. If there's nothing else, then unless there's any objection, we will adjourn.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
everyone.
have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Night.